Hi, I'm Nisande. Mimics are a really cool phenomena in nature where one life form evolves to look like another. It's not exactly the same as convergence, which is that, but the life forms simply look similar because they do similar things. With mimicry, it's a bit more complicated. For example, there's a species of fly that evolved to look like a bee for the specific purpose of looking like a bee. This way it can be a bit more intimidating despite not being dangerous. There are even flowers that look like insects and insects that look like flowers. The last one is the idea we'll be exploring today. The orchid mantis is an insect in the real world that has evolved to camouflage almost perfectly with orchid flowers in Southeast Asia. Its mimicry is a form of aggressive mimicry, but the mantis itself is the bait for its prey. It's giving anglerfish. On an Earth-like planet called Origin, there was once an animal that looked suspiciously similar to the orchid mantis. 100 million years ago, the humble Rhodic Mantis hid amongst the once common metallic flowers of ancient Origin. It preyed on the aileron bloom bees that fed on naturally occurring metals to reinforce their exoskeletons. By feeding on these herbivores, the Rhodic Mantis is able to get all the nutrients it needs in one meal. As time continued to flow, rhodium flowers became increasingly rare. This meant that nearly each one was occupied by a mantis, so these mantises were able to gorge on their metal-hungry prey and grow in size. As these prey eventually became extinct, the giant Rhodic Mantis had to find a new way to get lunch. 50 million years ago, well after arthropods on Origin had begun to develop adaptations to grow to larger sizes, the Boulder Mantis camouflaged in the rocky terrain of northern Origin. It was a much warmer climate than it is now, but it still didn't get much warmer than 20 degrees Celsius. These mantises didn't lure their prey like their ancestors, they just stalked the old-fashioned way. As life goes on, it often gets more complicated. In the distant past, Origin underwent a world-bending earthquake that split the north with a giant mountain. Most life in the area was thrown into the sea and didn't survive. The Boulder Mantis became rare but managed to survive in the ocean. They grew in size and their shape changed drastically. 20 million years ago, the Coralsect stalked the coral reefs of the Eastern Ocean. They breathed air, but they had larvae with gills. These larvae had a hard shell and were almost spherical. Eventually, their legs would break out of the shell and the animal would grow into an adult. The larvae fed on plant matter, but the adults would blend in with coral reefs and jump at prey that got close. Unfortunately, coral reefs are fragile, and they've gone extinct since then. The Coralsect made it back to land on the southern continent and evolved into its modern form. They have a light resemblance to the trees that surround them, but it seems to be good enough for its purpose. They bend their body at blinding speeds to gobble up their prey. In the modern era, one can find these treethropods in the forests of lichen. Not lichen like the composite organism made up of fungus and algae. Lichen is just the name of the northern area of the southern continent. Gosh, whoever gave it such a confusing name must be an idiot. Wait. Anyway, the treethropod's larvae resemble fruit or seeds, and they grow similarly to the last species I showed you. Also, the sturdy bottom legs actually develop from an abdomen, which is the spherical bottom part of the treethropod. They're solitary animals and only see others of their species when mating or raising their young, neither of which happen for a particularly long time. Here's a drawing of Treethropod surrounded by real trees and bending down to gobble up a raven drake. They can walk with their pseudo-legs and are surprisingly fast on all 8 legs. Here's a sketch of that. They obviously sacrifice the camouflage, but they mostly only do this when they feel threatened and or they're with others of their species. The larvae have only been studied recently, but have astonishingly high intelligence. They can remain in this form for years and seem to have complete control of their metamorphosis. They're known as Ninseeds and they live in colonies of up to 50. These colonies typically stay far away from their adult counterparts, as the adults show no signs of intelligence, even to the level of the larvae. Most of this research is still fairly new, as scientists hadn't thought to study the young of one of the most aggressive animals on the planet until recently, but maybe someday I'll be able to give you more details on these fascinating animals. Lastly, I'm gonna be honest with you. If Treethropod and Ninseed sound like Pokemon names, it's because they were meant to be that way a long time ago. I'm about to show you some very old drawings of mine, so brace your eyeballs for the chicken scratch of a caveman. This was long before I dated my drawings, but I made these sometime in 2015. That means I was 10 turning 11, so I hope that's a good enough excuse for the scribbles that may or may not be driving you mad depending on how into competitive Pokemon you are. Also, how good you are at reading the handwriting of a child. Not that my handwriting is much better nowadays. The more things change, the more they stay the same, huh? Anyway, yeah. The only characters on my channel older than Ninseed are the Bodogs and Crazimals from 2 Speculative Evolution videos ago. And there's not a whole lot of other ones. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed that little blast from the past, even with the indecipherable hieroglyphics lost to the sands of time. That's about it for this video. My next Spec Evo video will be on Sapient Iraq. Oh? Breaking news. Just kidding, I've been planning this for months. During the month of October, I'll be posting extra Spec Evo videos on Tuesdays. That means 5 extra Spec Evo videos. Don't worry about me, I've gotten ahead of this, so I'm not overworking myself too hard. In fact, I'm writing the script in July! Anyway, my next Spec Evo video will be on wolves in sheep's clothing. I hope to see you there, and thanks for watching!